Welcome to another day of After Hours with me, Valdes, and RAPiD.
Not Wolf.
Yeah.
No.
Not Wolf, it's
After
RAPiD.
Hours with RAPiD and Valdes.
Yeah. We're going to bring you guys the matchups for next week's Round 8 matchups here for SSL Premier, so let's get right into it. The first one is going to be Bjell versus Alive, and not the most hype Kickstarter for the round 8, to be honest. I mean, it's our two guys down near the bottom, Reed.
Yeah, when you look at this matchup, it's really hard to call. It feels like Bjell is just really struggling to get any kind of ideas about how to pick up a win. And while Alive has found a couple victories, he's still just not looking very strong. And against the top-tier players in SSL Premier, he's really been struggling. So I would give Alive maybe a slight advantage, but really anything can happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard one to predict. I think I'm going to give this slight advantage to Bjell. He actually looked okay against some of our Terran opponents.
That's true.
I think against a guy like Alive, who's also been really struggling, I think the backdooring, kind of counterattacking style of Bjell might just come through in the end. I think he'll get the slight advantage up against Alive in that matchup. So I'll have to give it to Bjell 2-1. For the second matchup of the night, it is going to be Classic versus Hero. Another PvP. That Hero is going up against a really strong opponent, but he looked okay against Stats today. What are you thinking, RAPiD?
I was going to say, we talked about this earlier during the Week 7 broadcast, but Stats just seems to be like way on top of PvP. So even though Classic has come out and he's kind of gotten a little bit of a taste of things, maybe Deer is starting to climb the ranks with some wacky strategies, this should really be what sort of tells the tale of where our top 3 Protosses really stand up. So I would say that for me, I want to see Hero do very well. Classic seems to be the more totally solid in all the matchups. Anything can happen when Hero is involved, but I'm going to give a slight lead to Classic, taking it 2-1.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you on the 2-1. Hero looked okay against Stats here. Stats, in the end of it all, he took the game, the series, with his DT kind of play, right? Which does denote, like, hey, Hero can mix with the best, he can come through, but I feel like overall, the just general level, you know, the skill level, the form of Classic nowadays is just a little bit too high against Hero, and I don't think he's going to come in with the upset this week around, especially because after his loss today against Stats, his record is really getting down there, so he's losing chances at playoffs, he's maybe losing a little bit of passion, and so I'd have to give the slight advantage to Classic in this one to take a 2-1 as well. For the third matchup of the night, it is going to be Maru versus Stats, a TVP. I guess I'll go first on this one. I think Stats is going to smash him. I think it is going to be a 2-0 stomp. I think Maru's going to come in, he's going to try some of the stuff that he's been doing against Deer. His overall TVP has been looking a little bit shaky, and Stats is looking like our guy to take first place for Season 2. He was really solid in Season 1. He's looking even better in Season 2. I think it's going to be a pretty one-sided one for Stats this time.
I would totally agree, Valdes. I think that Maru is really, I wouldn't say shaky, but definitely not up to his previous form, and Stats is looking better than ever. I wouldn't necessarily say a 2-0 for Stats, but definitely have him taking it in the end, possibly 2-1.
For our fourth match of the night, it is going to be a very close one that is extremely hard for me to even predict as we get down to the bottom of it. It's going to be Deer versus Dark. I'll let you go first on this one, RAPiD.
Oh boy, you're putting me in the hot seat. I want to say that Deer has really impressed me a lot, but Dark just looks unstoppable. We saw him in his ZVT in Week 7. We're going to see his ZVP, and if this looks good, then there might not even be anything between him and the playoffs. I would say, for me, it's a clear Dark victory, possibly even 2-0.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Dark, on paper, especially after the win tonight for Solar versus Deer, it was pretty one-sided because I feel like Solar, after he defeated Deer in a very one-sided victory in game number 1, Deer was like throwing all caution to the wind. He's like, well, let's try the weirdest builds that I have. And he barely won a game with one of them, and then he got crushed in game 3 with another one of them. But again, I feel like that really just speaks more to me about Deer's inconsistency overall. But I feel like he looked bad against Solar, but I feel like we could see a totally different Deer coming up against Dark. And it really depends for me on what is the form for Deer on next week. Obviously, he's going to come in very prepared for an opponent like Dark. If he looks good in game number 1, I think he should take the victory. If he gets stomped again, I think it could go 2-0 for Dark. So I'll kind of give 2 predictions for this one.
Nice.
I know I'm kind of being wishy-washy on this one, but it definitely depends on how Deer shows up in the beginning for this. So for our final match of the night, it's another big one. It's going to be Solar versus Innovation, a TVZ to finish the night. And Innovation's been looking a little bit better, but Solar also looked very composed in his win against Deer's very wonky builds. What are you thinking, RAPiD?
Well, I would say that Innovation has already taken a loss to Solar's teammate, Stats, a little bit early on, a couple weeks ago, and we also saw, I think it was Dark, take out Innovation as well. So still not looking totally indestructible, but voting against Innovation is just never a smart move. So even though Solar has shown signs of life and maybe still that ZVT matchup isn't totally locked down for Innovation, it's still definitely in his favor. I would say possibly even a 2-0 victory over Solar.
I'm gonna agree with you that Innovation is going to take this one. Solar's ZVP is immaculate, right? He takes out a big name like Deer. I don't think he's going to have quite the same amount of luck against Innovation, and I think it's going to be a 2-1. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. Solar, he really can get down and dirty, can play the late game or the early game. I think he might even come out with one of these very fast builds that hits Innovation right when he's like trying to get the gears rolling. He's like, okay, executing program A and B, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of roaches in his main, and he's like, what the hell is happening? We might see one of those, or we might just see him straight up outplay Innovation in one game, but I think overall, consistency-wise, I think Innovation should take this one 2-1. So that's going to do it for us here on another very special episode with me, Valdes, and RAPiD to finish you off here for After Hours. We'll see you next week for Round 8, for Week 8 of SSL Premier Season 2 at 7 p.m. PST. As always, we'll see you then.